Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Rick Kaplan, and my guest today is Doug Reed. He's the president and CEO of Meridian Associates. How are you doing this morning, Doug?
Very well, Rick, and thank you very much for having me on board.
And I have to congratulate you on your new position with Meridian. How's things going since you started? Well, this is like your third week or fourth week?
Yes, it is. Well, it's certainly, I'm absorbing a lot of information. And
you picked the right time.
Pardon?
I said you picked the right time to start a new position.
Yes, day one, in fact, the first week I worked in the office and I was just about the only one there. There a few hardcores that found it more productive to hide out in their office rather than at home with some distractions going on. But yeah, so I have over this last week and this week working at home.
So it's kind of interesting perspective that you can give us because, you know, starting in a new position with all this that's starting up, how do you handle all that?
Yeah, well, what's very interesting to me is how things align, because I had similarly at the very beginning of our last big recession, I had landed with an engineering architectural firm just as that recession was happening, for different reasons, of course, but the same thing had happened. So when I arrived at the office and it was empty and everything going on, I said, wow, this is deja vu in terms of, you know, in terms of actually the priorities and things we have to do from a business point of view are similar, except certainly the difference is we're working remote. But even in that environment, it was a company that had many offices, so we were pretty used to working remote. So for me, the working remote part, and I'm pretty used to it, having a lot of faces on the screen when you're doing video chats and a lot of voices on the conference call. So that's kind of normal for me almost, but not for everybody. What is different is how many on the client side and the regulatory side and different planning boards, they've all moved at home too. So it's the entire world is at home, video chatting, with occasional child in the background, walking across the screen, or some noise here and there. So it's interesting how people now have this sort of relaxed idea about what it's like to be on a call. It's a lot different rules than it was before. We all know what's going on, and we're all here in it together. So, you know, we're making best.
Right. Well, that's what makes it a little easier because everyone's in the same boat. It's not like your company is in a special situation from others.
Right.
But you know, you obviously now you have experience because you went through downtime at one point and just starting a new position. Now you're doing it again.
Sure.
So you have a little bit of experience with this kind of not as harsh as this
No.
COVID-19, but
Right.
so how are you the employees of Meridian? How are they all coping with now working from home and a new boss and at the helm? How's that all playing out?
Well, I've been reminded that I'm on my honeymoon period. So far it's been fantastic. What really attracted me to Meridian was a few things. One is that everybody I met over a couple-month period before I came on board was very excited about working for the company. They loved working for the company, and many had been here for 20 years, where it's a big part, or maybe even the only place they've been in their career. So just the environment was very friendly, professionally, but friendly. Everyone knew each other, loved the work, liked their clients. So it was a very positive atmosphere. So that was certainly very interesting to me, as well as just the book of services that they provide and the kind of clients that they serve too was also, I think it was very interesting in that it was, I find it very progressive, a lot of the sort of the newer kinds of solutions. So I'm drawn in general to innovation and technology. So Meridian is smack in the middle of all of that change that's happening in the industry. So, but the employees seem to be loving it. They you know, now the new norm when you have a video call, I had 14 people in the call just before this, is the first few minutes is everybody seeing each other, and they haven't perhaps even seen each other since the last meeting I had with the managers, for instance. So there's a lot of chit chat and chatter at the beginning, just happy to see each other. So that's an interesting change from your video call. I have to build in some time for the chit chat at the beginning as everyone's commenting on what's going on. So they have fun with that, and I don't find we actually are very pleased that the productivity hasn't been impacted one bit, not in the least. So working remotely seems to be quite seamless, and it'll be very interesting once the world returns to normal. How much of this sort of endures.
Well, it's funny you were saying that because I do a lot of interviews, and the majority of people have been saying that they're themselves working at home, they've been a lot more productive.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you don't know when the 9 to 5 hours are when you're at home,
No.
or the Monday through Friday, so
Right.
it's 7 days a week, and 24 hours a day, you could be working,
Yeah.
you lose track of the days and the time. So most people have said that their teams have been more productive. They've been more productive, and you're also cutting out travel time if people are driving into an office. So
Right.
and this area, that could be a 2-hour trip in the morning and 2-hour trip at night. So that's a lot of time to be more productive.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's interesting that you've had that perspective on that. I didn't know if it was just part of being a CEO and a president is the fact that I will have 7:30, 8 o'clock at night conversations with people, and maybe a Saturday, or maybe even very early in the morning. They said I think that's in part just the life of a CEO. It's that you just have to be available. But you're right. I think it is. With people in their personal lives, it's all different. With children and other obligations and family members in the household, they are productive because they work all that around their business obligations. So it might mean, okay, I'm going to have to catch up this evening or this weekend on it. But for me, fortunately, there's no children in the background here. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah, me neither. But
my daughter tells me her productivity is in the trash because she has a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old that are walking around the house while she's working. So
yeah, everyone can figure out a way.
Yeah.
You get through it.
Yeah.
And it's a little different, but I think going forward, this is going to be. I think a lot of companies are going to look at this and reevaluate how many people do we really need to come into the office.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that necessary?
Yeah. And again, some companies, if they're geographically diverse, I think for a long time, have had certain employees working out of their home. And in my past, when we looked at geographic expansion, it was hinged not only, having clients in those areas, but it also was hinged on adding employees with different skill sets to the company. And more often than not, we would decide that it was important to have that employee on board without any regard to whether they were near an office. So in that case, we brought the employee on to have that skill,
Right,
and that impact, and they just worked out of their house because they might be 2 or 3 hours away from an office. So that's been happening for a long time, and I think this is, as you were saying, it's definitely going to push it more in that direction.
So in Meridian Associates, a little bit of a background on the company. They're an engineering firm, but what type of projects have they been working on?
Yeah, well, they're an engineering firm, but they're also a land survey firm. We involved with the newer technologies such as laser scanning, which is a sort of the newer form of survey, where you're using mobile or aerial devices to capture with laser 3-dimensional models of a piece of property, the exterior of a building, or even the interior of a building. And that's what's new about that is now the new systems allow that kind of data to carry forward to design It can be used to plan the construction. It can be used to monitor the construction. And then the owners of those facilities can use that data to manage their facilities, particularly owners that have colleges with diverse campuses, corporations with campuses all over the world. Sometimes they can use that to manage it. So that's, we're really positioning for that, as well as renewable energy like solar and wind, which has certainly been accelerating that usage and creating another an alternative for everyone to use energy that's renewable, as we say, as opposed to carbon focus. So Meridian has a very diverse set of markets where we operate, providing this sort of niche type of services, the engineering and survey and LiDAR that I mentioned to you, and landscape architect. So we could be working with a residential developer on single family, multifamily houses. We could be working with commercial developers who are working in the retail or the new mixed use kind of facilities. And we could be working with school systems on renovating or enlarging or modernizing their school systems, their school facilities, as well as college and universities, hospitals, and things like that. So pretty diverse in terms of the clientele that we have. And as I said, we're not the architect on the job. We're often teamed with the architect on the job. And we're not the builder, but we might be working with the contractors ultimately building it. But we're largely working on the front end and the planning, the property assessment, the layouts, the permitting, the approvals, the planning boards, and things like that, and helping the owner to get their project to a point where they can then begin construction. And then we help work with them to monitor that construction.
So have you seen any type of a slowdown since this all started?
We have not. One of the first things I did coming on board on day one of when everyone was working at home was to put together a business plan, and I called it the Meridian Beat the Recession Plan. And in that, we took a look at our recent backlog of business and tried to do some forecasting and put together a plan for the what ifs. So certainly at that time, everyone had begun working at home. So there was a couple weeks before that of the equipment and software and training and actually doing a practice run on how to do that. So everybody was at home, but we needed to really look at what the impacts might be. So we are very fortunate is that we have not skipped a beat. Our business is just as strong now as it was 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So we have not, fortunately, seen any downturn, despite the fact, as I was describing, we're largely private sector and focused, which is often the group that gets hit first in a recession. But it's not happened to us yet. But we do have a plan for what we're going to do if that were to happen. So we're looking at it closely. But if, for instance, this beat the recession plan, well, it mirrors what I did 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so, at the front end of the last recession, is we decided not to do what I know that many companies are going to do. If business does drop, they immediately go into a mode of trying to cut costs, maybe do layoffs, and trying to just survive. Way I describe it actually in this report is a lot of survival plans are actually starvation plans. They make it worse. So we do the opposite, and this is what worked for me before, is we pour on things like education programs, learning programs, examining our processes and getting better at them, getting better at managing our client relationships, our projects, our billings, just go into full-blown learning program to just knowing that we're going to come out of this stronger. What I also see is that when anybody who's seen a decline in business, the formula that works is to just double down on your best clients. So it's not to go out and start pursuing business with people who you don't know at all and don't know you at all. It's a lot of effort and usually doesn't lead to a lot. And many firms start doing that when in fact, the solution for you is actually just doubling down on your best clients. So it's a process we're going through right now. It's just, how do you define a best client? So
That's so smart.
Pardon?
I said, that's so smart. You know,
Well,
you're so proactive on this. This is, I'm impressed by that
yeah,
because, you know, so many companies, they just react, you know, at the time. And you've actually prepared for all the different situations that it will eventually benefit you in the long run.
yeah. And I not only because I've lived through it before, but didn't mention that for about a decade before I took this position, I actually spent time as a business consultant advising the industry, architects, engineering firms, and construction companies on a myriad of business processes, from strategic planning to particular processes like project management. So, you know, those clients I've had have heard this, you know, that the clients you have in good times will be your best clients when things are tough. And so to respect those relationships, deepen those relationships, broaden those relationships, work off of referrals, because you know what, your best clients, their friends and peers are likely to be best clients too. So we try to work within that. So that's my overall advice, and I've written a lot of papers and blogs on that topic. Is that really it's like if to take advantage of an opportunity like this, if you do have a slowdown, to try to figure out ways to double down on that. Particularly, I know I was in a discussion group yesterday with 50 CEOs across the country, and we were talking about response to the COVID impacts. And it came up some of the federal monies that are out there, and the payroll protection plan being one, and a number of firms have applied for those funds. I understand that not everybody was secured those funds in the first rounds, but Meridian was successful at securing those funds, and so we now have that in our account. So that is, to me, a tool to use that should business decline dramatically. I was able to go in front of all my employees virtually and say, no one's going to get laid off. No one's going to get their salaries cut. We're going to use these funds to maintain full employment. Everyone is valuable. It costs a lot to lose somebody if we were to lay them off or furlough them. So we're retaining them. And if they do find more time on their hands because we go through a slow period, we're going to be pouring on these learning programs. Just pouring them on. So they're going to be busy as ever, but they're going to be learning and improving themselves, which in turn is going to improve the company. So
Right. So it keeps
that's what this
pushing
plan does.
Meridian Associates higher and higher in the scale.
We're expecting to come out of this stronger than ever. So that's what 12 years ago in that recession, we organically doubled the company and dramatically improved the profitability simply by doing the types of things I just went over.
Well, you have the right idea, Doug. I mean, you're well prepared. I like that, and I'm sure all your employees are embellishing, what you're doing here.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like you came into this company with the experience to handle a situation like this.
Well, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, well.
I said to everybody, I said, well, Doug did it once. I don't know. Can Doug do it?
Well, I hope you do it again, and I think you will.
Oh, thank you. And so far they're very enthusiastic, and we already have in just a few weeks quite a bit of improvement in a lot of areas. So again, we're kind of expecting things to turn south. It just seems like it should. I mean, I just got a survey of the engineering, architectural, construction industry that a company just put out, a company that does surveys of our industry, and the first quarter survey suggests that many areas were already starting to slow down before this hit. And so some of particularly the housing and retail industry is forecast to take a major hit. So for instance, for everybody and for us too, if you look at these forecasts, the areas that are going to counter that are the ones that kind of make sense. Anything medical, hospitals, healthcare facilities, retirement communities, those are the ones that are trending up and everyone expects them to trend out. So for all of us, if you have clients in those areas, guess what? We're going to double down on those areas too.
Fantastic. I could talk to you for another half an hour, Doug.
Yes, it's been fun. Thank
you. But we have limited time. I want to congratulate you on the new position again, and you sound like you're a perfect fit for it, by the way. It's Doug Reed, President and CEO of Meridian Associates. Thank you, Doug.
Okay, thank you very much for having you.
Thank you for watching today's interview. If you'd like to be a guest, a sponsor, or even advertise in the New England Real Estate Journal, you'll find our contact information in the description box below. You can also find all our social media platforms so you can follow us, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.